What's going on, everybody? My name is Jimmy. I am an aspiring photographer here in Birmingham, Alabama. And what I wanted to talk about real quick today was shooting photos at a higher ISO. I want to make this video as quick as possible. So what I basically want to get across is I shot 2 photographs of an older camera here that I have on my desk with the Canon T5i, which is a much older camera. And I shot the first photo at 100 ISO. I shot the second photo at 12,800 ISO. And the photo that I shot at 12,000, I went in, did a little bit of noise reduction in the Lightroom software, masked my sharpening and sharpened up some of the edges and stuff on the photo. And I'm just trying to show you in this video that you can get really good quality photos at a high ISO value. One of the things I'm hearing about all the time nowadays in the photography industry is don't buy this camera, or don't buy that camera, or don't buy that camera because it doesn't shoot well at a high ISO. Pretty much any brand new camera that came out in the past 2 years is gonna shoot really good at high ISO, especially for Canon if it's an APS-C or a full frame camera. Okay, people talking about like worrying about the digital noise in an R5 or an R6, I don't know. Like, I almost have no words for that. Worrying about a little bit of digital noise in my Canon T5i that was made in like 2012 or 2013, yeah, that's probably a valid concern because cameras had a lot of digital noise back then at high ISO. But like the newer cameras, you ain't gotta worry about it for the most part. Unless you're shooting at 154,000 ISO and you're in the depths of a cave where it's midnight black around you and you need to light it up. Like, I mean, you just don't really need to worry about it that much. And I'm gonna show you it in here in my computer with 2 photos taken with the T5i, 100 ISO, 12,000 ISO. Let's go. All right, everybody, we are inside my computer now and we are looking at Lightroom, and I've got all of the photos down here. You can see on the film strip at the bottom of the screen. These are all of the photos that I took. This was the subject for the photos today, my old Canon A540 camera, which is actually a lot of fun to still shoot with. I actually still have some fun shooting with this camera. I don't like going through all the AA batteries, but or even when I use the rechargeables, whatever. It's fun to shoot with though. But you can see I shot this at 100 ISO, 200, all of the increments that the camera shoots at, 400 ISO, 800 ISO, 1600 ISO, 3200 ISO, 6400 ISO, and 12,800 ISO. Now, I know this might not be the best example of shooting at high ISO because there's a lot of areas of this photo here that are well lit. It was taken in kind of a brighter area. Whenever you shoot in darker areas or you have a lot of darks in your photos, like a lot of blacks, you're gonna see more digital noise in your photos. But I'm gonna show you what I was explaining earlier, how you can kind of reduce the noise in your photos, sharpen them up a tiny bit, and as long as the photos are processed well and sharpened well and that sort of thing, they're still really good photos. So this here at 100 ISO, we zoom in to 100, you can see it's a pretty sharp photo, as it should be. It was locked off on a tripod when I was taking these photos. That's just dust and stuff up there on the camera. It was locked off on a tripod. It's probably a little bit soft because it was shot at 135 millimeters, which is the far end of that lens. But overall, though, it's pretty sharp. Now, let's jump to the photo over here at 12,800 ISO. Okay, So there, you saw quite the change in the photo there. You can see this is at 100 ISO. There's no like specks or anything in the background. It's nice and blurred. It's nice and smooth in the back. You jump here to the 12,800. You start noticing a lot more digital noise in the photo. If we zoom into 100, you can really see where that noise starts to show up, like here in this black area right in the center of my screen here. If you zoom in here, you can kind of see all up in this area. But if we zoom out, right? Actually, I'll leave it zoomed in here, okay? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna leave it zoomed in so you can see some of the black here, and you can see some of the background up here. Let me drop down the film strip, make it just a little bit bigger. And so what you're gonna see here is we're gonna come over here to these sliders, and I'm gonna bring the noise reduction down by about 50%. I'm gonna bring it up to about 55, 60, somewhere around there, okay? Now, bringing it up around 50, 55 or so, there's still some noise in the photo. I mean, there's still some specks. I mean, if you compare that to the 100, the photo that was shot at the 100 ISO, the 100 is still going to be a little bit cleaner image. But now if we zoom this out, okay, we zoom that out, that looks like a pretty good photo. If it's, you know, now, like I said, this was taken in a controlled environment. It was locked off on a tripod. It wasn't shot handheld. Even at 12,000 ISO, this was only shot at 1/80th of a second. You know, so it's still a relatively clean photo, though, when you do the noise reduction. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a quick sharpening tool. What you can do is hold down the Option key on your Mac. I think it's the Command key if you're on a PC. And you're going to come down here to the sharpening area. You can see the cursor here. And where it says masking, when you hold down the sharpening, you can click on Reset Sharpening. That's why it says that. You're going to hold down the Option key, and you're going to move this masking slider, and look what happens. So everything that you're seeing in white is going to be sharpened. Everything that's black is not going to be sharpened. So we're going to move this over here all the way to where you can just kind of see the edges of the camera, and we kind of eliminate all of the specks and stuff. You can see when you bring it back here, you can start to see some of the grain and stuff in the desk. We're going to bring it here to where you're kind of seeing the outline of the camera, right about there. Maybe right about there. Okay, let go. And now we're going to bring the sharpening up on the, I don't want those curved edges sharpened too much. So we're going to go about like that. Probably about right there. Sharpen this up, and you can see that looks like a pretty clean photo. It's sharp, it's in focus, it's relatively clean, a lot of the noise is gone. Now look, if you bring the noise back, yeah, it gets a little grainy, it gets a little funky looking, like in the background and on the camera. But if you bring that noise reduction back down and you crank it back up, to me, that's a pretty decent looking photo, if you ask me. I mean, that is a decent looking photo. You know, the focus is a little bit softer. If you look here, I'm going to jump back to the photo here at 100 ISO. If you look at the words here on the lens, right in the middle, at 100, it's definitely sharper. The 100 ISO image is definitely a sharper image. Could I get away with posting this image, though, that I took at 12,000 ISO online, as long as it was a sharp image? Abso-friggin-lutely you could. Absolutely. I would have
no problem sharing that image on social media. Now, I would probably be hesitant to shoot at this high of an ISO for like a client, for like a wedding or a portrait session or something like that. If I can shoot at 3200 or 1600 or even 6400, I would. I rarely shoot this camera. Very, very rarely ever do I shoot or need to shoot this camera that I have at 12,000 ISO. I never shoot this camera at 12,000 ISO unless I absolutely, in a situation where I absolutely have to. But normally the highest that I shoot this camera at would be the 3200. So this here would be shot at 3200. I would bring the noise reduction up a little bit, mask it, bring up the sharpening like this, like that. And that's probably about the highest I would go delivering the photo to someone. I would not have a problem shooting a portrait session or something like that at 3200 with this camera. I could probably push it to 64 if I needed to, but I would probably be, or sorry, this was actually 1600. This here actually is the 3200. So we'll bring the masking up. The photo that I was just doing was accidentally the 1600. Bring the noise reduction up, mask it out, bring it down to where just kind of the outlines are showing like that, sharpen it up a bit, and this is shot at 3200 ISO. So this is at 3200 ISO on an older camera. The Canon T5i was made in like, I don't know, like 2012, 2013, somewhere between 2012 and 2014. So it's an older camera. It's anywhere from 6 to like 7 to 9 years old at this point. So don't be afraid to shoot at a higher ISO if you need to. Shoot at a lower ISO if you can. But if you need to crank up your ISO to get the photos that you want to get, by all means, crank that ISO way up if you need to. Shoot until your heart's content. Have fun with it. Don't worry too much about, shooting at those higher ISOs. If you can avoid them, that's great. But overall, I think you're okay with it.
So there you go. That kind of gives you a good example of the two photographs, and it gives you a really good example of how you can get a halfway decent photo at a really high ISO. Yeah, the one at 100 ISO is a little bit sharper. When you zoom and you look at the details, it's not even a little bit sharper, it's sharper. But can you get away with shooting a photo of your dog at 12,000 ISO? Absolutely. Did I get away with shooting a photo of this old camera at 12,000 ISO? Absolutely. And if someone looked at that photo on Instagram or Facebook or Flickr or Twitter or YouTube or anywhere online, it's gonna look pretty good. Now, if I blew that photo up to, a 40-inch print, yeah, it's probably not gonna look that great. It might be a little bit soft. It's not gonna be real tack sharp. But if you're sharing the photos online and it's just kind of everyday use, shoot at a higher ISO, crank your ISO up. I challenge any of you to go out, put your camera way up there in ISO, 12,000, 24, I don't know what the cameras go up to, at a higher number, 36, 40, whatever. Crank your ISO up, go out at night, shoot some photos, have some fun, bring them into Lightroom, bring the noise reduction up, reduce some of the noise, sharpen the photos up a little bit, and just have fun with your photos. Don't worry so much about the little intricacies of the quality in them. So anyways, I just wanted to put that video together for you guys today. I got more videos coming out, at least one new video per week. So be sure to like this video if you got something out of it, subscribe, and I'll See you in the next one.